Redditor 1. I was 14, maybe 15, when I found myself crammed into the splintered pine bunkhouse at Cedar Creek Scout Camp, elbow to elbow with about 20 other scouts, all of us on edge as the clock's hands crept toward midnight. The weekend had been packed with marksmanship drills under daylit skies and nerve-rattling ghost tales once darkness swallowed the woods. The cabin was rudimentary. Twin windows at either end, benches affixed along the walls, and two creaking doors opening onto an inky expanse of pines. Our adult chaperones were quartered in a separate structure, an old ranger's lodge, about an eighth of a mile uphill, connected by a gravel lane that wound like a serpent through the underbrush. Sometime after midnight, I felt the inevitable urge to answer nature's call, which meant trekking back to the ranger's latrine. Prudence dictated I not go it alone, so I grabbed my friend Marcus. Bears were known to prowl these parts, and Boy Scout protocol plainly forbade solo night excursions. We even clipped our folding knives to our belts, though we knew they'd be little defense against anything larger than a raccoon. The walkout was quietly tense. Gravel crunched beneath our boots. Moonbeams sliced between tree trunks. We swapped half-hearted jokes and listened for snapping twigs, half expecting a beast's snarl. After we finished, we set off back toward the warmth of the cabin. That's when the atmosphere shifted, the air grew heavy, and a silent alarm blipped on in my mind. Marcus's breath hitched beside me. We both snapped open our knives and broke into a brisk clip, refusing to glance backward. Then I saw it. At first, my brain sprinted to label it a bobcat or lynx, some stray feline stalking the night. But the figure stood fully erect, at least 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders too broad and hips too narrow for any regular animal. Two spire-like protrusions crowned its head, ears or horns. I couldn't be sure. The moonlight painted its outline in silver, but the most chilling detail was its eyes, gleaming like coils of reflected light. Panic surged through me. My pulse thundered. Marcus gasped and cursed under his breath. We fled, rocks and dirt spraying in our wake. Then came the sound, a warped howl, part groan, part scream, echoing among the trunks. It felt as though the forest itself was lamenting. I dared to glance over my shoulder. The creature followed, loping at a leisurely pace, as though savoring our terror. The scout lodge never looked so far away. We burst through the door, pounding on the wood, voices cracking as we barked for someone to let us in. Inside, pandemonium erupted. Two of our peers shoved a heavy bench against the back door. Another crouched against the front window with blade in hand, and someone scrambled to pull down the blinds on the other windows. Except one pane, no curtains, no shutters, stood naked and exposed. Through that bare window, I saw 2 points of light glinting back at me. The hairs on my neck stood on end. A faint thud shook the planks at the back door, and another distorted, mournful cry cut the silence. We pressed ourselves flat against the walls, breaths suspended. Then, as abruptly as it began, it ended. The lights winked out. The sounds faded into the distance. We waited, petrified, until pale fingers of dawn brushed through the treetops. When morning came, the adult leaders dismissed our story as the product of high adrenaline and campfire hype. But those of us who crouched behind that makeshift barricade know what we saw, something not meant to exist beyond the nightmares we tell each other in the dark. Redditor 2. I've spent nearly 10 years living on our isolated outpost at Sagebrush Valley Homestead, so far from municipal glow that the Milky Way drapes across the sky like a luminous banner. Many wax poetic about the tranquility. I find it unsettling. As a committed night owl and habitual smoker, I often step onto the back porch at 2 in the morning, cigarette in hand, to survey the quiet farmland. Usually the only soundtrack is distant owl calls and the hum of crickets. But sometimes that silence is what unsettles me most. Over the years, I've glimpsed odd pinpoints of light streaking across the firmament, tiny sparks that veer at unimaginable angles or vanish without a trace. My logical mind chalked them up to meteors grazing the atmosphere or classified satellites shifting course. My gut whispered an alternate explanation. If something intelligent enough to light years tracked a course to Earth, why parade it under blinking strobes? Despite a dozen such episodes, none rattled me like the still, muggy July night a few seasons ago. Normally, cicadas would drown out all else, but that evening the air lay stone silent. I stepped out and saw it, an unadorned black cylinder drifting across the starfield, blotting out constellations as it passed. No lights, no hum of rotors or engines, just a void slicing through the sky. My chest tightened. I held my breath as it glided, inexorable, until it disappeared behind a cluster of cottonwoods. My heart raced for minutes afterward. I recounted it to my partner Harper over breakfast. He offered up military drone theories. But drones buzz and balloons wobble. This moved with the deliberate grace of a submarine seeking depth, except it flew overhead in absolute silence. Months later, Harper jostled me awake to report a triangular craft, dimly lit along its edges, gliding soundlessly through the sky. He tried waking me so I could witness it firsthand, but I was buried in slumber. Now we stand sentinel on the porch, scanning the heavens. Most nights, it's just satellites and the occasional airplane strobes far above the haze, but every so often we see motion that defies known flight patterns, or feel the hush of nocturnal wildlife pressing down around us, and we share a look that says, the sky still holds secrets beyond our comprehension. Redditor 3. I'll never forget the crisp bite of early winter air in the Pinecrest Highlands, where firs scrape the sky and every gust smells of evergreen. My family preserved a tradition. Each December, we'd venture up the forest road to harvest our own Christmas tree. Dad's old pickup would carry us, Grandpa in the passenger seat, thermos of coffee in hand, Mom and my sister in the cab, me in the truck bed beside our hunting hound, Dixie. Snow crusted the ground in a sparkling glaze. The road twisted through towering pines, sunlight scattering in crystalline fragments. Dixie romped ahead, nose to the wind, when she froze, hackles raised, issuing a low, menacing growl. I peered into the woods, expecting a deer or the rare black bear. Instead, I saw a towering form, dark brown, nearly black, moving in uncanny silence roughly 60 yards from the road. I tapped on the cab window. Dad slowed. I shouted, "Stop! There's something out there!" He laughed it off. Probably a hunter in camo. But I swore I saw broad shoulders and a barrel chest, motion too fluid for a human in heavy outerwear. The figure adjusted its course, gliding deeper into the woods until it vanished behind a rise. Scout dogs howl at predators. Dixie's reaction was pure alarm. Lunch that day, as we bound our chosen spruce to the roof, Dad teased me about my Bigfoot sighting, grilling me for details as if testing my recall. I described the shape's deliberate gait, how Dixie's hackles flared, how my heart felt lodged in my throat. No one believed me, but every year since, when snow drapes the high country and the wind dies away, I recall that silent silhouette drifting through the pines and wonder what really walked among those trees. Redditor 4. At 10 years old, my 4th grade class's wilderness discovery camp at Maplewood Retreat felt like an extended field trip. Canoeing, Camp Chow, flashlight comics. We arrived Monday. Buses disgorged us onto gravel, surrounded by pines. The cabins stood in neat rows. The dining hall smelled of hot dogs and cleaning solution. A battered bathhouse squatted nearby. Our counselor, Mr. Stokes, a towering man with a piercing voice, laid down the law. No solo treks. No showers after dark. No wandering beyond the cabin after lights out. But obviously, rules are meant to be tested. Night 2, I volunteered to clear the dining hall, collecting wrappers, scrubbing tables, hauling out the locked trash bin. I borrowed a battered lantern and slipped to the bathhouse alone, rationalizing that a quick rinse wouldn't count as breaking curfew. Inside, steam hissed. The single bulb overhead stuttered in and out. Mid-wash, I heard leaves scuttling across gravel, sharp snaps like claws dragging over rock. I froze. The noise ceased as suddenly as it began. I hurried out, toweling off, pajamas in hand. The trail back lay in eerie silence. No cicadas, no crickets. Lantern beam dancing ahead, I tread carefully among gnarled roots. Then, a deep guttural moan, resonant and close, shook my bones. I screamed, dropped the lantern, and bolted blindly into the dark. I crashed against something yielding and foul. My hands pressed into sticky warmth, blood. A sour metallic tang filled my nose as the moan echoed behind me. I raced to torchlight and voices. Counselors and campers crowded around, horrified. My clothes were covered in dark fluid. They searched me for wounds, none visible. I sobbed as they hurried me back. That night, we barricaded doors and huddled under bunks, every rustle triggering fresh terror. Later, I learned a young buck had been found off-trail, head severed, entrails laid aside in neat piles. Rangers blamed scavengers, counselors blamed overactive imaginations. But for us, who sprinted through the dark, soaked in deer's blood and terror, the woods held a menace more calculating than any bear or bobcat. Redditor 5. Hypnagogia has been my nightly torment since childhood. Vivid, half-formed apparitions at the threshold of sleep. Parents dubbed them night terrors when I'd shriek at writhing shapes in my room or fling pillows at phantom figures. Then Uncle Riley died, our family's handyman wizard, the one who taught me to fish. His funeral felt surreal, grief laying a heavy blanket over our lives. That night, I drifted into the usual haze of hallucinations, expecting terror. Instead, I saw him, Uncle Riley, hale and hearty, in his familiar striped shirt, walking down the hallway outside my door. He paused, offered a gentle nod and half smile, then passed out of sight. Instead of fear, I felt calm, like being told everything would be all right. At breakfast, I recounted it. My mother blinked away tears and said, "I dreamed Riley came to see me, told me not to worry." How extraordinary that we each had a vivid visitation that same night. It shattered my confidence in dismissing my nightly visions as mere hallucinatory glitches. My father chalked it up to shared dreaming. My mom couldn't help but believe it was his spirit checking in. Since then, I've learned to greet my hypnagogic figures with tranquility. Who's to say which are figments and which might be traces of lives that linger beyond our perception? Redditor 6. I first noticed those uncanny lights one summer evening with friends at Cedar Ridge Park. We were horsing around on the swings when 4 colored orbs, red, green, blue, white, began rotating overhead in perfect unison. No aircraft shape, just lights marking an invisible disk. Then, in a heartbeat, they blinked out, leaving us in stunned silence. My second sighting came alone in my backyard. A silver metallic disc hovered silently, no hum, no lights, then executed a flawless triangular path. Idong, stop, each turn swift and precise. My heart pounded until it vanished in an instant. The third encounter, 4 years ago at a friend's barbecue, was the most unnerving. I stepped outside to make a call and saw a matte black plate drifting overhead like a silent sentinel. Seconds later, a flash of electric blue lit the sky, and the object disappeared without trace. Our companions observed the strange lightning, but nothing else. 3 UFOs in my life. I've wondered if this is some clandestine military test range or something far more mysterious. Whatever it was, I'm thankful it hasn't returned. The sensation of powerless awe at witnessing something beyond explanation is one I hope not to repeat. Redditor 7. I was 8 or 9, living on a dirt lane in remote Willow County, with woods stretching behind our yard for as far as I could see. I'd spend dusks chasing fireflies, convinced wild turkeys lurked beyond the tree line, though neighbors swore none ventured this far south. One evening, I knelt by the pines, cupping insects in my hands when a sharp snap echoed nearby. Heart hammering, I looked up and saw 2 glowing orbs floating 3 feet off the ground, wide, unblinking, fixed on me like hunters' sights. I froze as those eyes rose slowly to 6 feet, then 8, revealing a hulking silhouette. I didn't hear a roar. I watched its lips curl back, revealing a flash of teeth. Fear exploded inside me, and I sprinted home, tears stinging my eyes. I burst through the back door, pleading with my father to follow me outside. He scowled, accused me of fibbing, and sent me off to bed, with a harsh spanking for lying. I never mention it again, but I never forgot. Even now, when the moon casts long shadows across my yard, I feel those unblinking eyes tracking me, and I recall the terror of that silent stalk before it vanished into the darkness. Redditor 8. I was 19 when Grandma Belle passed away. Weeks later, our family convened at her antique Willow Manor to sort keepsakes or share memories. That old Georgian house smelled of cedar and lavender, but at night it felt hushed, empty without her lively laugh. Sleepless, I camped on the living room sofa, flipping through late-night reruns on her ancient set until I drifted off. At precisely 3:31 a.m., I woke to icy air and the TV's silent glow. There she stood, Grandma Belle, vivid and solid in her favorite floral dress. She fixed me with a gentle but firm gaze and murmured, "Go upstairs and sleep in a proper bed." Startled but obedient, I gathered my blanket and trudged upstairs to a vacant guest room. When I glanced back, she was gone. Morning light found me curled on the new mattress, blanket tangled around my legs. At breakfast, I described the visit. Mom set down her coffee and smiled sadly. "She never liked you sleeping on the couch," she said softly. She believed me without hesitation. Whether dream or visitation, Grandma's final admonition felt like a farewell hug, a last piece of care crossing the boundary between life and death. Redditor 9. At 6, I'd tiptoe downstairs to join my mother in the dining room, where she spread her graduate textbooks across the table. Half awake, I'd nibble an apple and do puzzles until the haze of drowsiness crept over me. I'd feel weightless, as though I floated along the carpet calling her name in a distant echo. Then everything would fade into darkness, and I'd awake in her arms, warm and safe. Years later, I unearthed the house's tragic history. The original owners, a young family and their red-headed son, had perished there in a murder-suicide. The boy's body was discovered where I used to lie, behind the table. It felt impossible, yet every detail matched: the floating sensation, the muted voice, waking in the exact spot where he fell. I can't shake the thought that perhaps those nights I drifted through the dining room, I wasn't alone. Someone guided me back to my mother's arms. Since learning the truth, I no longer dismiss those midnight wanderings as mere sleepwalking. Redditor 10. I've always trusted the constancy of the night sky. As an amateur stargazer who spent uncounted evenings charting the heavens from my friend Liam's hilltop deck, I believed I understood every flicker of our local firmament, even through the haze of urban glare. But what unfolded under those stars last night has shattered my certainties, and I need to record it while I still can. I arrived at Liam's place exactly at 9:15 p.m., travel mug of steaming coffee in hand, telescope bag over my shoulder. The sky was unnaturally clear, no scattered clouds, no smudge of city glow, stars shining with an almost edited crispness. Familiar constellations looked subtly altered, their shapes unnervingly precise, as if someone had rearranged them when we weren't looking. "Can't beat nights like this," Liam murmured, securing the tripod to the weathered deck boards. The wood groaned underfoot in the stillness. I glanced at my phone, 9:27, and the thermometer plunging faster than a typical autumn evening. A thin veil of mist curled around the tree bases, lending the woods an otherworldly hush. Through the eyepiece, I was centered on Betelgeuse, marveling at its fierce brilliance, when, at 9:30, a searing white flash ripped through the dark horizon behind the ridge of pines. It wasn't heat lightning or an airplane's strobes, but a vast crystalline flare that painted the clouds in ghostly white. My hands shook on the focuser as the afterimage lingered. Liam whispered something, but words failed both of us. We fumbled for our phones, scanning radar apps and flight trackers. No storms, no aircraft in the vicinity. The only sound was our ragged breathing. I realized the crickets had fallen silent. I couldn't recall when the insects had gone still. Then, at 9:45, a second flash bloomed, this time a dark arterial red 90 degrees east of the first flare's position. My stomach turned. This was no random flash. The red glow pulsed once, and exactly 5 seconds later, the white flare answered, brighter than before. I tapped my watch. 5.00-second intervals precise to the millisecond. No terrestrial gadget could keep that timing. I started counting. 1,000, 2,000, 3. Each pulse felt deliberate, as if lighting an invisible stairway stretching upward beyond the tree line. By 10 o'clock, a third white flare had joined the duo, south of center, forming a perfect triangle of spectral signals. They traded colors in complex sequences: red, white, white, red, red, white, red, white, white. patterns like a cosmic Morse code we were never meant to decode. Then a low whir began, so faint at first I thought it was in my skull. It swelled, bypassing my ears and triggering a primal panic. The woods remained motionless. No rustle, no bird call, just the droning hum. Dogs in neighboring yards answered with mournful howls, uncharacteristic sobs that spoke of dread I couldn't name. And around each flash, for a heartbeat, I glimpsed impossible shapes. Fractured geometries folding into themselves. Angles that made my vision blur and my thoughts splinter. Each signal made those patterns grow more vivid, as though someone were sketching them against the void above. The fog thickened, and the temperature must have plunged 15 degrees in 20 minutes. My breath came in visible gasps, but the chill seemed to radiate downward from whatever lurked in that triangle of lights. By 10:30, my head felt like it would split open. Something was prying at my mind, trying to seed thoughts that weren't mine. "I should go," I croaked, voice hollow against the alien hush. Liam stood beside me, transfixed, a trickle of blood seeping from one nostril. He seemed unaware. The drive home was a nightmare. Those flares pursued me, shimmering through each window pane. The whirring echoed off the car's metal, invading the stereo's circuitry. I hadn't turned it on, yet the display flickered. The dash clock stuttered through indecipherable digits. My phone lit and dimmed with text fragments I hadn't composed. I burst inside my house and began typing this in frantic urgency. Even now, through my office window, I see the angles drawn between the pulses, the shapes fully formed, yawning open in the sky like a wound. Footsteps scuttle across the roof, not human. More than 2 points of contact, too many altogether. My phone buzzed. It was Liam. "They're descending. They've shown me what's coming. Pray." The power flickers in time with the flashes. Red, white, white, red, red, white. Shadows dance on my walls, limbs and facets that defy earthly geometry, creeping closer by the pulse. They've found their quarry. Redditor 11. I've never shared the true story of my last night at River Cross Faith Camp. For 15 years I've carried these memories alone, tortured by guilt and wonder. But I can't stay silent any longer. I was 22, hired as the summer percussionist for the evening youth services. Though I wasn't devout, I appreciated the sense of unity that music inspired. Behind the small chapel lay Lake Meridian, black and still, ringed by pines that scraped the starfield. Most nights, only crickets and water ripples broke the hush. The bizarre events began one Tuesday after Vespers. 4 of us, me, Emily from the choir, and junior counselors Evan and Lily wandered down to the lake's edge. The air was ominously calm, the kind of quiet that whispers for you to hush your own heartbeat. We lay on the grass, pointing out shooting stars, when Emily froze. "Watch that one," she breathed. A point of light danced across the sky in unnatural arcs, tracing polygons no satellite or plane could manage. We stared until the rest of camp drifted away. Just before dawn, the light slipped behind a cloud, peered out once more, like a farewell, and then vanished. Word spread. Every night that week, a small but eager crowd gathered. By Friday, we were 6. Emily, Evan, Lily, plus Daniel from the kitchen, and Avery, the Bible study leader. The teens had retreated after the farewell prayer. We remained by the water's still shore. The light returned, drifting lowered each evening. By Friday, it hung mere hundreds of feet overhead, a perfect orb of pale radiance, with a beam of what looked like distilled moonlight streaming down. No sound, no warmth, just that uncanny glow. "It feels wrong," Avery whispered, hugging her knees. She was right. The woods around us were motionless. The lake had gone mute. Then the sphere dipped behind the opposite tree line and vanished. Our hearts pounded until it reappeared directly across the water just 20 feet above the surface. Its beam swept the shoreline, illuminating each of us in turn. I saw awe etched on their faces, not terror. Emily rose, stepping forward into the shallows, then Evan. Lily followed. They walked in perfect sync, water soaking their clothes. I tried to yell, to stop them, but my throat constricted. The light held me in place. They paused waist-deep in black water, heads tilted up. Above, the orb began pulsing in intensity. That's when I heard it, not through my ears but inside my mind, a chorus of tones twisting in impossible harmonies, each note contorted so it ached to perceive. Above the sphere, the beam shifted from white to an unworldly hue I cannot name. In that light, I glimpsed forms slithering beneath the surface, long limbs or tentacles exploring the edges of our friends. Then 5 simultaneous splashes shattered the tableau. Before the glow winked out, I glimpsed a colossal geometric silhouette moving through the depths, angles folding into angles, a shape no natural world should contain. In darkness I bolted, screaming their names. The lake lay calm and empty, no ripples, no bodies, nothing. A 2-week search turned up nothing. Authorities blamed a tragic drowning. My protestations about the light were dismissed as survivor's guilt. But I know what I saw. On clear nights, I still peer at the water, imagining geometric figures drifting in the depths, waiting for that impossible luminescence to call them home. I haven't touched drumsticks since. The rhythms haunt me. Occasionally, as sleep overtakes me, I hear that warped melody again and feel the tug to return to Lake Meridian. I fear one day I'll answer, Redditor 12. The wine stain on my favorite linen shirt never faded. I fixate on that useless detail when I find myself gazing too long at the night horizon, recalling the evening at Seacliff Pier when everything fractured and we lost Ethan. It began like any college summer night. 5 friends, me, Ethan, Maya, Jordan, and Blake, slipped onto the beach about 200 feet from the pier. We tucked behind an old lifeguard shack, sharing boxed wine and wild dreams of post-graduation triumphs. That evening held a strange, electric tension. The air felt suspended, though no storm threatened. Stars burned fiercely. On the water, pinpoints of light reflected in shifting patterns. Flares? Jordan muttered, pointing seaward. We expected brief marine distress signals. Instead, a sphere of molten orange fire drifted toward the pier, larger than any flare and alive with flickering plasma. No crackle, no warmth. You'd expect heat, but the beach remained cool. It's too low, Maya's voice trembled, and too slow for a meteor. All eyes turned as the orb stopped at the pier's end, its blaze subsiding to reveal a surface that devoured light. Then it began moving sideways, following the shoreline. Natural objects don't glide with that precision. I should have fled. Instead, Ethan rose. I need to see it, he said, stepping onto the open sand. The sphere halted. Its flames pooled inward, the darkness that appeared felt thick like liquid midnight moving with intent. Ethan, no, Maya cried, but he pressed on toward the water. Silence followed. No waves, no gull calls, no swoosh of traffic, only the soft crunch of sand beneath his feet. At the pier's edge, he waded in, the water calm to his waist. I raced after him, bottle slipping from my fingers and ablazing my shirt in burgundy rings. The sphere hovered 50 feet above the surface. Around Ethan, slender columns of water rose, as though invisible straws drew it skyward in a perfect circle. His eyes reflected no light, just pits of deep black. His lips curved into a grin that split his face unnaturally wide, revealing too many teeth. Maya screamed, snapping me from horror. We turned and ran, hearing the foam collapse behind us. We found others near the pier entrance, teenagers oblivious in their selfies. None had seen the orb or Ethan. Search parties, police boats, divers scoured the shore for 3 days. They ruled it a drowning accident. But I know better. In nightmares, I still see that void above the water and glimpses of impossible landscapes behind its veil. In my dreams, Ethan stands beside faceless figures, all with those hollow black eyes, moving in jerks and twitches no human frame can manage. Sometimes local news mentions strange lights by Seacliff Pier, or the occasional missing person. The authorities point to rip currents or foul play. I keep that wine-soaked shirt tucked away as proof. What happened that night was no accident. They are coming back, and next time they will take more than one.